Hey everyone, so real quick before I get into the questions, what I wanted to show you all is something that I learned the other day. If you come up here and you just type in like 98 or 90 or whatever, it'll take you to that page. A student taught me that last week, and I can't believe I'm this many days old before I realized that. Okay, so on to the fever questions. These are our last set of fever questions, which I know we are so excited for. We are done. This is my last video. This is our last set of questions that we have to answer. But I know that these questions have been frustrating for some of you and that you guys have not loved them, but I also want you to just look at all of the accomplishments that you have made, all of the wins that you have had by going through and doing these questions, right? You guys are better at answering questions about theme. You guys are better at identifying a metaphor and a simile and telling me what those things mean. You guys are better at looking at imagery and just telling me and finding the imagery, knowing what imagery is, and just all around explaining how it affects a story. You guys are better at telling me about the different points of view and how first person point of view is vastly different than third person point of view. You guys are better at, static and dynamic characters. You know what a dynamic character is now. You know how they must change throughout the story. You guys are better at identifying the conflict, especially climax and resolution and all of those things. So all of these things we have learned, but you guys have also just become better at writing. You've become better at comparing and contrasting other pieces of literature with each other. You guys have become better at just looking at a question and being able to formulate your answer relatively quickly, but also clearly. These are all huge accomplishments, and I know that it was challenging, but because it was challenging, you guys have just grown so much throughout these questions. And I hope that you realize that, and I hope that you pat yourself on the back and that you acknowledge it. So this 2-minute spiel to start is going to make this video a little bit longer, but I just wanted to make sure that as you're watching this, like, I'm proud of all of you and all of the things that we have gone through with these questions. Okay, so in the epilogue, Maddie begins her day before the sun rises. What does this new routine suggest about the theme of hard work? Here we go with that theme, right? And new beginnings. And you understand this, right? Think about Maddie in chapter 1 and think about Maddie now. Through her conflict, what has she learned about hard work? How is she different, right? How does the return of Mother in chapter 29 serve as the resolution and to the story's longest running conflict? And so I don't think you need these pages, but there are page 98 is when she comes back, and it's at the end of chapter 28. And I just think about, like, what was the main conflict. The whole book was obviously the fever, but there was a minor conflict that the fever had separated Maddie and Mother. And so now this separation is done. I think about my daughter the other night. She could not find one of her dolls that she has to sleep with. And so we looked through the whole house for like 30 minutes trying to find this doll. We scoured the house. We looked through multiple rooms multiple times. Could not find it anywhere. She was very upset, and we finally were just like, I'm sorry, we've got to go to bed. We'll try to find it tomorrow. And as I'm going to put the blanket over her blanket, baby shark blanket, I pull the baby shark blanket up, and what falls out of the baby shark blanket? But the doll. And so the conflict is over. We have reached the resolution. And now she was all happy. She wanted to go tell mom that she found it, and so on and so forth. My point being is that it's the same thing here, right? Only this is like real life type stuff, like looking for a person. But you get the gist. Identify the role of Nathaniel Benson in the final chapters. Is he a protagonist? We've learned protagonist and antagonist, right? Is he the main character in these final chapters, or does he just serve as a supporting character to Maddie's journey? So looking at these things, right? Is he in any way, shape, or form? This is page 96, chapter 28. Does he in any way, shape, or form become the main character? Is he telling us the story? That's how he would become the protagonist of these chapters, because it's first person point of view. If it's still being told by Maddie, then guess who is our protagonist? The author uses the repetition of the word hope as the market fills with people. How does this word choice signal a change in the story's voice? Voice is just the way the author is speaking to us, right? And because through the way the author is speaking to us, we develop a tone or we develop a mood. Oh, that's another thing that you guys have become really good at, is finding tones and moods. So think about why an author repeats something, or anyone repeats something. Also think about this word hope, okay, that we are seeing now versus despair that we maybe saw through chapters 13 through 20. How is this different? How have things changed? Imagery. All right. Describe the imagery of the coffee house in the epilogue. Does the description of the smell of coffee and toast create a tone of anxiety or peace? I could not really find strong imagery about those smells, but maybe they're here and I just skipped over it. Like I saw the coffee for myself. I cut a lump of sugar off I saw some stuff, but I didn't, like, I guess it does still add to this, but I saw this word peaceful. I mean, like, if anyone's feeling anxious at this point in the book, please talk to me. Okay. Like, I feel like it's just so relaxed here as opposed to earlier when it was busy. Excuse me. How does Maddie's first person point of view, here we go. We're good at this, y'all. We are good, right? And the epilogue help the reader understand her personal feelings about her mother's frailty. Now, frailty is just another word for fragile. Fragile is another word for something that is easy to break. And so here, this is probably the biggest thing where it's about her being easy to break, right? Her hands lay in her lap, withered. What does withered mean? Think about a flower. What does a withered flower look like? And a limp. What does limp mean? I had never seen her hands stay still before. That's a big statement. That's a hyperbole, but the point being is she's always doing something, right? They'd always been busy with cleaning or needlework or polishing. I blinked away. I had a sudden sense of what has to come, and I blinked away the tears. Help me upstairs, Maddie, Mother said. I need to rest. Mother from before never would have asked Maddie for this. Mother from before would have never stopped being this, okay? So she is easily broken now. What does that mean? How has the atmosphere of Philadelphia changed from the beginning of the book to the epilogue, right? So we have a busy Philadelphia to start the book. Then we have the chaotic chapters of the fever in the middle of the book. And now we have a calm and relaxing Philadelphia, peaceful even. And so if we're coming to this peaceful Philadelphia, how is that different from the busy one, right? And when it comes to atmosphere, this is a word I don't think we've talked enough about, but it'd be like if you came into my classroom tomorrow and the lights were on and I was, like blasting like aggressive music or something. How would you feel coming into that? I would be like scared or something like that. Or I was just like constantly yelling at every single one of you, just looking at you and just screaming at the top of my lungs. Not because you did something that you weren't supposed to do, or that you know what I'm saying. Like just that was my constant. How would the atmosphere in the room change? Would you want to come into the room? Historical fiction often, so that's atmosphere. So how's the atmosphere here? Historical fiction often ends with a look at the aftermath. How does the ending of this novel show the long-term effects of real historical disaster? And so I really think the appendix goes into the historical disaster, but these are historical quotes as well to start a few chapters, and there's also the appendix. But I would say, like, again, it kind of goes back to something that we talked about earlier. We had like the busy Philadelphia earlier, and now we have this calm and relaxed and peaceful Philadelphia. So that's the aftermath, right? Why are we in this aftermath? Why is this where we are currently? How did the fever affect us and make us come to this point? And so in the epilogue, Maddie says that the coffee house was the heart of the city. Identify the type of figurative language and explain why the coffee house is being compared to a heart. So here we go. We have a comparison. All right. So we know it must be a simile or a metaphor. And so I was hoping just once it would be in the story. It's not in the story, but you get the idea. Tell me what type of figurative language this is, which you guys are good at doing now, and tell me why we're comparing the coffee house to the heart. Now, on to the art DQTs. Analyze how the theme of equality is developed through Maddie's decision to make Eliza her business partner in chapter 27. That's where you need to go to find your answer. Why was this a heroic or radical choice for 1793? And just think back to what you guys learned in history class this year. What was it like for minorities in the late 1700s, the 1800s? And we're not just talking, not only is Eliza African American, but she's also a woman. And so now we have an African American woman as a partner with a white woman. A white business is very different than an African American business. It's not to say that African Americans could not have a business in 1793. It's to say that how would a white person's business be treated differently than an African American person's business? And Eliza is partners with a white woman. So it's a very, very, very big deal. It's very heroic. It's very radical. It is both of those things for a woman to be in that position. Explain how the climax of the fever influenced the resolution of Maddie's business. Could she have become a partner in the coffee house without the events of the epidemic? So think about like Maddie from the beginning of the story. Okay, would she be the Maddie of today if the fever hadn't happened? Would she have been the Maddie of today this quickly if the fever hadn't happened? Would she have the strength and the resilience to become or to want to run this coffee house with somebody else if this fever hadn't happened? Those are some questions to be thinking of. Again, I would say chapters 27 and 28 to find the quote. Compare Mother's character in chapter 1 to her character in the epilogue. Is she a dynamic character, or has she simply been broken by the antagonist, the fever? Now, I found those quotes for you earlier where she was broken, okay? And so this is an interesting deep dive into dynamic versus static characters, because she has changed. She is not the same mother that she was at the beginning, but has she changed at her core? If she wasn't weakened by the fever and in this weakened state, would she be relaxed and peaceful and resting like she's doing? And I don't think deep down she is relaxed and peaceful and resting. I think she is frustrated that she can't do what she used to do. So would she be doing those things, or would she be busy? And that's what you need to ask yourself. Is she changed completely? If she has not changed completely at her core, in her mind, then she's still a static character. Analyze the author's use of central language. How does the description of... I would not do this question. Evaluate the tone of the final conversation between Maddie and her mother. How does the author use dialogue to show a role reversal between the two characters? Chapter 29 and throughout page 100. You could also go earlier and look at the quotes from their conversation on chapter 1. And how are the conversations different? It's like Maddie's the mom now taking care of her, right? How does the first person perspective in the epilogue allow the reader to see Maddie's internal growth? How would the ending feel different if it were told from Mother's point of view? I love these types of questions just because it would be so different if Maddie was telling this. If Mother was telling this, would she be proud of her daughter, disappointed in her daughter, frustrated with her situation? How would Mother be reacting to this situation that we are currently in? Explain how the setting of the reopened coffee house symbolizes the resilience of Philadelphia. How does the physical space reflect Maddie's internal state? So chapters 27 through 29 all address some aspects of these questions, as does the epilogue in its own way. Okay, and just think about the word resilience and how has Philadelphia been resilient? How do they resist this fever and come out and survive? You know what I'm saying? Compare the resolution. I would not do this question at all. I'm not going to waste time reading it. Analyze the metaphor in chapter 29. Mother was a weathered branch. Why would the author choose this specific image to describe Mother after return? I don't know where this is, and I don't want you using this quote. If you choose this one, I will need a quote from the text that shows that she is a weathered branch, that show that she is resilient in some way, shape, or form. And then we have the word partnership, guys. Invalid, phonics, substitute, prosperous, feeble, resolute, and truce. And I just need you to write one-word definitions of each of this. I think we've gotten better at doing this too, which is great because that's what's on the SOL is these types of context questions. All right, we made it through fever. Thank you, guys. This was probably my longest video I've made, but I wanted to just have a big shout out for all of the wins that you guys have had throughout these chapters, even though throughout this book, even though it's been difficult. All right, bye everybody.